My grandfather William was always the steady anchor in my life. Growing up, we shared a bond that went beyond typical family ties. When he showed up at my 21st birthday party with his lawyer, I never expected him to announce he was putting his entire fortune in my name. The joy I felt quickly turned to tension when my stepmother Diana stood up and declared with a cold smile, "I will manage your money for you, Hunter. You are not ready for this responsibility." If you are watching this right now, drop a comment telling me where you are from, and hit that like and subscribe button as I take you through what happened next in my family. I was born into what seemed like a happy family. My father James worked long hours in construction management, slowly building his way up from a site supervisor to a project manager. My mother was loving and kind, the type who baked cookies for the neighborhood kids and volunteered at every school function. But when I turned 8, our world collapsed. Mom was diagnosed with aggressive cancer, and within 6 months she was gone. Dad was devastated. He worked even longer hours, partly to support us and partly to escape the empty house. That is when my grandfather William stepped in. He had already retired from his successful business ventures, and had plenty of time to pick me up from school, help with homework, and make sure I had some sense of stability. William was not just wealthy. He had built multiple businesses from the ground up, selling them at the right time, and investing the proceeds wisely. But you would never know it from how he lived. His house was comfortable but modest, his car reliable but not flashy. He always told me, "Hunter, wealth is not for showing off. It is a tool for creating freedom and helping others." 3 years after my mother passed, Dad introduced me to Diana. She worked in the administrative office at his construction company, and I later learned she had actively pursued him, knowing he was vulnerable and a widower with good career prospects. Their courtship was brief, and before I really had time to process it, she became my stepmother. Diana was friendly to me at first. She bought me gifts, asked about my interests, and acted like she wanted to be part of my life. But something always felt off. Her smile never quite reached her eyes when she looked at me. Once they were married, the facade began to crack. She started finding reasons why Dad could not pick me up for our planned outings. There were suddenly rules about when I could call him at work. Family dinners became less frequent, as she scheduled social engagements with new friends who were all childless. Meanwhile, my relationship with Grandpa William grew stronger. Every Saturday, we would go fishing at the lake near his house. As we sat waiting for the fish to bite, he would tell me stories about his life, the mistakes he made, and the lessons he learned. Those mornings by the lake shaped who I am today. We had a tradition where we would stop for ice cream on the way home, and he would ask me, "So, what did you learn today, Hunter?" It was never about the fishing. It was about the conversations. Diana hated these outings. She would make comments like, "I do not understand why you need to spend so much time with your grandfather when you have a father right here." But Dad rarely contradicted her and our time together, as father and son dwindled. As I entered high school, I noticed how Diana and Dad began living far beyond their means. Diana drove a luxury SUV that was replaced with a newer model every 2 years. They renovated their house with high-end fixtures and designer furniture. There were expensive vacations and country club memberships. Dad seemed stressed about money, but Diana always dismissed his concerns, saying they deserved to enjoy life. Grandpa William noticed too. During one of our fishing trips when I was 16, he said, "Hunter, there is a difference between wealth and appearing wealthy. Some of the richest people I know drive old cars and live in modest homes. They are secure in who they are. Remember that." When it came time for college, I chose a state university with a good business program. Diana pushed for me to apply to expensive private schools, strangely insistent that money was no object. I later realized she assumed Grandpa would pay, further draining his resources that she hoped would eventually come to Dad and by extension to her. But Grandpa William had already set up a specific college fund for me years earlier. It covered tuition, books, and housing with some left over for emergencies. He had thought ahead as he always did. I worked part-time jobs for spending money, wanting to develop my own work ethic, rather than relying completely on my grandfather's generosity. During my sophomore year, I started hearing about financial troubles at home. Dad called less frequently, and when he did, he sounded tired. Through family friends, I learned that his construction company was struggling after some risky expansion projects that Diana had encouraged. There were rumors about second mortgages and credit card debt. Still, Diana continued to maintain appearances, posting photos of expensive restaurants and shopping sprees on social media. During my junior year of college, Grandpa William began having health problems. His doctors found heart irregularities that required frequent monitoring. I drove home every other weekend to visit him, help around his house, and simply spend time together. Despite his condition, his mind remained sharp as ever. Diana suddenly developed an intense interest in Grandpa's health. She began calling him regularly and even arranged for food delivery services to his house, despite his protests that he could still cook for himself. She would show up unannounced with soup or groceries, making a show of caring for him. Grandpa would thank her politely, but later tell me, "Your stepmother is about as subtle as a bulldozer, Hunter." During one of my visits, while we sat on his back porch watching cardinals at the bird feeder, he brought up his legacy. "I wish your grandmother could have met the man you have become, Hunter. She would have been so proud. I want you to know I have been thinking about the future. When my time comes, I want to make sure what I leave behind helps you become who you are meant to be, not just someone with money." I tried to change the subject. I did not want to think about losing him, but he was insistent. "Promise me you will use whatever I leave you to build something meaningful. Not just to have things, but to do something that matters." I promised, though the conversation left me unsettled. A month before my 21st birthday, Grandpa visited his attorney. He did not tell anyone in the family about this meeting, but I later learned he had been meticulously updating his will and establishing various trusts. He was planning for every contingency with his typical foresight. As my birthday approached, Diana took control of the celebration plans. She rented an expensive venue, invited people I barely knew, and ordered a custom cake that must have cost hundreds of dollars. When I suggested something smaller with just close friends and family, she dismissed me. "This is a milestone, Hunter. We need to celebrate properly." There was something in her tone that suggested the party was more for show than for me. On the night of the party, I felt uncomfortable with the extravagance. My college friends looked out of place among the business associates and social connections Diana had invited. Dad seemed distracted, checking his phone repeatedly and nursing the same drink all evening. When Grandpa William arrived with his lawyer, Mr. Peterson, I was relieved to see familiar, genuine faces. During the toast, Grandpa William asked for everyone's attention. He stood tall despite his health issues, his voice strong and clear. "On this special day, I want to announce a decision I have made. I am officially transferring the majority of my estate to my grandson, Hunter, effective immediately. He has shown the character and judgment that gives me confidence in this decision." The room fell silent. I felt dozens of eyes turn to me in surprise. My father's glass paused halfway to his mouth, and Diana, her perfectly made-up face frozen in shock, turned pale. Grandpa continued, "My attorney has all the paperwork ready. Hunter, this includes the investment portfolio, the rental properties, and majority ownership of Highland Development. The formal transfer will be completed this week." I was stunned. I knew Grandpa was well off, but I had no idea the extent of his wealth. Before I could respond, Diana stood up and walked to my side, putting her arm around my shoulders in a gesture that appeared affectionate but felt like a vice grip. "This is wonderful news, but of course James and I will help Hunter manage all this," she announced loudly. "He is still young and needs guidance with such responsibility. Your father and I will manage it for you, Hunter. This is too much for someone your age to handle alone." I stepped away from her grasp, confused by her presumption. "Thank you for your concern, but I think Grandpa William trusts me to make my own decisions," I said, trying to keep my voice even. Diana's smile tightened. "I am just being practical. You have no experience with this level of wealth. Your father and I have been managing our finances for years." She turned to my father for support. "James, tell Hunter. This is the sensible approach." My father stood looking uncomfortable. "Maybe Diana has a point, son. This is a lot of responsibility all at once. We could help you until you get your bearings." I felt betrayed. For years, Dad had deferred to Diana on almost everything, but I had hoped, when it really mattered, he would stand with me. "I know this is unexpected, but this is Grandpa's decision, and I want to respect that," I said. Diana's voice rose. "You are being incredibly selfish right now, Hunter. Your father has worked alongside your grandfather for years. Did you ever think that perhaps this money should rightfully be supporting your father first? We have expenses, commitments." The party guests shifted awkwardly, witnessing what should have been a private family discussion. My college friends looked mortified on my behalf. I noticed Mr. Peterson, Grandpa's lawyer, watching the scene unfold, with a knowing look that suggested he had anticipated exactly this reaction. "You think I am too immature," I responded, feeling heat rise in my face. "Yet you are the ones living beyond your means, buying status symbols you cannot afford, and now expecting to control money that was never promised to you." Diana's face hardened. "How dare you speak to me that way after everything I have done for you? This family has serious financial obligations that you know nothing about. Your father has debts related to his business that need to be addressed immediately." That was the first I had heard about serious debt. I looked at my father, who avoided my eyes, confirming Diana's statement. The revelation hit me hard. They had been counting on this inheritance. In their minds, they had already spent it. The argument escalated. Diana listed all the reasons I was unprepared for such responsibility, from my choice of major in college to friends she deemed unsuitable. She brought up instances from my teenage years, twisted to make me sound irresponsible. With each accusation, the birthday celebration deteriorated further. Grandpa William finally interjected his voice, cutting through the tension. "This decision is final. The transfer documents are already prepared. Hunter has demonstrated the values and judgment I want to see carrying forward my legacy." I looked around the room at the uncomfortable faces of people who should never have witnessed this family implosion. Without another word, I walked out the celebration of my 21st birthday in shambles. As I drove away, my phone lit up with messages from friends asking if I was okay. But how could I be? In one evening, I had gained a fortune and lost what little family connection I had left with my father. The next morning, Mr. Peterson called me. "I need to meet with you privately to go over the details of your grandfather's estate planning," he said. "Can you come to my office this afternoon?" In his wood-paneled office downtown, Mr. Peterson laid out the full scope of my inheritance. "Your grandfather has been planning this transfer for years, Hunter. The estate includes commercial real estate properties generating monthly income, a diversified investment portfolio, and controlling interest in Highland Development Corporation." The value was staggering. I felt overwhelmed by both the responsibility and my grandfather's trust in me. Mr. Peterson must have sensed my anxiety, because he added, "William has structured everything with careful protections in place. The assets are held in various trusts with specific conditions. You cannot sell the core business holdings for at least 5 years, giving you time to learn the operations. There are also provisions for financial advisors who have worked with your grandfather for decades." He handed me a sealed envelope. "Your grandfather asked me to give you this letter explaining his decisions." I took it with trembling hands. When I returned to my apartment, I found 3 missed calls from Diana and a text message demanding we meet immediately to discuss the family financial situation. I did not respond. Instead, I opened my grandfather's letter. "Dear Hunter," it began. "If you are reading this, then you have already experienced the reaction I anticipated from Diana. I have watched her influence over your father grow over the years, and I have seen how she has systematically isolated him from you and from sound financial judgment. The inheritance I have left you is not just money and property. It is the freedom to chart your own course without manipulation. Use it wisely, not just for yourself, but to create something meaningful." He went on to explain that he had set up a separate, smaller trust for my father that would provide income but protect the principal from being depleted. It would only activate if Dad sought financial counseling, a condition Grandpa hoped would help him recognize and address the unhealthy financial patterns in his marriage. The letter gave me strength, but the days that followed tested that resolve. Diana launched a campaign to pressure me into giving them control of at least part of the inheritance. She enlisted family friends to call me, suggesting I was being unfair to my father. She spread rumors that I had somehow manipulated my elderly grandfather, exploiting his failing health to secure his fortune. Most painfully, she convinced my father that my refusal to share the inheritance was a betrayal of family loyalty. One evening, Diana showed up at my apartment unannounced. She had abandoned her usually polished appearance, apparently hoping to appear sympathetic. "Hunter, we need to talk about this situation as family," she said when I opened the door. I reluctantly let her in, maintaining my distance. Diana immediately launched into her rehearsed speech. "Your father is heartbroken that you would turn your back on him like this. We have mortgage payments that are behind. His business is at risk. If you just signed over the Highland commercial properties to us, We could stabilize everything. I thought about how she had systematically pushed me out of my father's life for years. How suddenly I was family when money was involved. No, Diana. I will not sign over anything. Those properties are part of the legacy Grandpa built over decades. They are not going to be liquidated to cover debts from your overspending. Her sympathetic facade cracked. We will contest the will. Your grandfather was not in his right mind, and I will make sure everyone knows how you manipulated a sick old man. The threat made my blood run cold, but I stood firm. Are you really willing to drag the family through a public legal battle? Because Mr. Peterson has assured me the will is ironclad. Grandpa had full cognitive assessments done before making these changes. Diana stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. That night, I felt more alone than ever. The inheritance that should have been a blessing felt like a curse that had exposed the worst in my family. I called my grandfather, needing his wisdom. "Hunter," he said gently, "money does not change people. It reveals who they already were. Stay the course. The truth has a way of coming to light." I spent the next week consulting with Mr. Peterson and the financial advisors my grandfather had recommended. I researched family business dynamics and trust management. I reconnected with mentors from my business program at university. Through this process, I discovered something unexpected. My father's business partner had been trying to warn him about financial mismanagement for over a year. Diana had intercepted these communications, dismissing the concerns as jealousy. Armed with this knowledge and a clear plan, I scheduled a family meeting at Mr. Peterson's office. I requested that my father come with or without Diana. Predictably, she insisted on attending and brought her own attorney, a nervous-looking man with an ill-fitting suit who kept checking his watch. My father looked terrible, with dark circles under his eyes and a defeated slump to his shoulders that broke my heart. He had always been a proud, hard-working man. Seeing him reduced to this state strengthened my resolve to handle the situation properly. Diana began the meeting on the offensive. "We are here to discuss the unreasonable distribution of assets that unfairly disinherits James Williams' only son." Her attorney nodded in agreement, though he seemed less confident than she did. Mr. Peterson remained calm. "Before we proceed with your concerns, there is something William asked me to share in exactly this circumstance. With Hunter's permission, I would like to play a video recording William made 3 months ago." I nodded, though this was the first I had heard of any video. Mr. Peterson set up his laptop, and suddenly my grandfather's face filled the screen, his eyes clear and determined. "If this video is being played, it means exactly what I predicted has happened," my grandfather began. "James, my son, I love you deeply. That has never changed. But over the years I have watched with growing concern as your marriage to Diana has led to financial decisions that threaten your long-term security. I have attempted to discuss this with you numerous times, but those conversations have been intercepted or dismissed." My father shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Diana's face flushed with anger. The video continued, my grandfather detailing specific instances when Diana had approached him for large loans using my father's business as justification, but planning luxury purchases instead. He described conversations where Diana had suggested he change his will to leave everything directly to my father with her as co-trustee. He even played a recording of a phone call where Diana had said, "James has been your son his entire life. Hunter is just your grandson. Blood should count for something." "Diana is not interested in your welfare, James," my grandfather said sadly from the screen. "She is interested in status and control. I am leaving the majority of my estate to Hunter, not to hurt you, but to preserve what I have built and hopefully to open your eyes. Hunter has instructions to help you if you are willing to make changes in your financial management. There is a trust set up for you that will provide substantial income if you agree to financial counseling." The office fell silent when the video ended. Diana's attorney closed his briefcase and whispered something to her. She hissed back at him, but he stood up. "I do not believe I can continue to represent you in this matter, Mrs. Calloway," he said before, nodding apologetically to the room and leaving. My father sat frozen, staring at the blank screen where his father's face had been moments before. When he finally looked up, I saw something shift in his eyes. "All these years I thought I was supporting your choices," he said to Diana. But he was right. You have been controlling everything. Diana tried to backpedal. "James, you cannot believe this. Your father was always jealous of our happiness. He never approved of me because he wanted to keep you dependent on him." She reached for his hand, but he pulled away. It was the first time I had ever seen my father stand up to her. "I saw the bank statements, Diana. I know about the credit cards I supposedly approved. I know about the withdrawal from our home equity that went to your sister, not to my business." Diana gathered her purse and stood up. "If you choose your father and this ungrateful child over me, you will regret it," she snapped before walking out. The three of us, Mr. Peterson, my father and I, sat in silence for a long moment. Then my father turned to me, his eyes filled with regret. "I have failed you as a father, Hunter. I got lost somewhere along the way." I moved to sit beside him. "We can fix this, Dad. It is not too late." We talked for hours that afternoon. Really talked for the first time in years. He admitted how Diana had slowly isolated him, how his grief over my mother had left him vulnerable to someone who seemed to take charge of his chaotic life. He acknowledged the shame that had kept him from reaching out even when he began to see the problems. Over the following weeks, my father moved out of the house he shared with Diana and into a small apartment. He began attending financial counseling as my grandfather had required, uncovering the full extent of the debt Diana had accumulated in their joint names. It was worse than even he had imagined. I worked with the advisors my grandfather had put in place and created a plan. We restructured Dad's construction company, bringing in his original business partner to help right the ship. I established clear boundaries, helping financially without enabling poor decisions. Most importantly, I followed my grandfather's wishes by creating a foundation in his name focused on financial literacy for young adults. Diana filed for divorce, demanding half of everything, but, with the evidence of financial misconduct, Mr. Peterson had documented her claims were significantly reduced. She eventually moved to another state, already in a relationship with someone new. Someone with the wealth and status she craved. My father and I rebuilt our relationship slowly. We revived the fishing tradition my grandfather had established. Though we were both terrible at actually catching anything, the conversations were what mattered. One Saturday, as we watched the sun rise over the lake, Dad said, "I spent years chasing the appearance of success instead of the real thing. Your grandfather tried to show me that. I am glad he found someone who understood." I now run Highland Development with a team of experienced executives who share my grandfather's values. The company has grown, but more importantly, it has maintained its commitment to ethical business practices and community investment. The inheritance that Diana coveted so desperately has become a vehicle for positive change, just as my grandfather intended. My grandfather passed away peacefully 6 months after my 21st birthday. At his memorial service, person after person stood to share stories of how he had quietly helped them through difficult times, extended loans that had saved their businesses, or provided opportunities when no one else would. The money he left me was substantial, but his true legacy was the example he set. Sometimes wealth reveals character, sometimes it destroys it, but in our case it ultimately restored what had been lost. My father found his way back to himself. I found my purpose. And the fortune that could have torn us apart forever instead gave us a second chance at being a family. The most important lesson I learned through all of this was not about money management or business strategy. It was about recognizing true character and standing firm in your values even when it feels like you are standing alone. My grandfather saw something in me that I did not yet see in myself. His trust became my strength when I needed it most. Today I make decisions by asking myself what Grandpa William would do. Not just in business, but in life. Would this make him proud? Does this honor the values he lived by? The inheritance was never really about the money. It was about carrying forward a legacy of integrity, foresight, and genuine care for others. My father and I now have the relationship we should have had all along. We talk several times a week. He has found happiness in simpler living, focusing on the work he loves, without the pressure to maintain appearances. The trust my grandfather established for him provides security without enabling the destructive patterns Diana had encouraged. Last month, Dad met someone new. She is kind, unpretentious, and genuinely interested in getting to know me. The contrast with Diana could not be more stark. Watching him laugh again, seeing him comfortable in his own skin is worth more than any inheritance. As for me, I recently started a mentoring program for young entrepreneurs, sharing the wisdom my grandfather passed to me. There is something powerful about helping others find their path, just as he helped me find mine. The money he left me opened doors, but his example showed me which doors were worth walking through. Have you ever had someone believe in you before you believed in yourself? Has anyone ever seen your potential and trusted you to live up to it? If so, drop a comment below and share that experience. I read every comment and would love to hear your story. Do not forget to like this video. If it resonated with you, subscribe for more real-life stories and share it with someone who might need to hear that standing up for yourself is worth it, even when it is difficult. Thank you for listening, and remember that true wealth is not measured in dollars, but in the lives you touch and the legacy you create.